Glenn Lehman from Lehman Property Management coming to you again talking about the topic of is Pennsylvania a landlord or tenant friendly state? I promised you last time when I was done talking that we would talk a little bit about abandoned property and what we have to do with the property that's left in a home after the tenant has been ejected by a constable. Bear in mind, you can't just set a tenant's belongings out on the street the day that you take possession, and you need a state constable to take possession of a property with a legal court order. Let's talk about abandoned property and a little bit of the history behind where the abandoned property bill came from. It used to be in 2007 when we opened that everybody said you have to keep property for 30 days, you have to keep property for 10 days, you don't have to keep property for any amount of time. So basically there was no regulations in the state, so you could throw the tenant's property out as soon as you did an ejectment, and you could later have a judge say that wasn't reasonable and then be held liable for throwing away the tenant's property. Or you could set it there for 30 days and have a judge that said, well, I don't know why you bothered doing that. Somebody's looking at you like, well, I never keep it for that long, and you're feeling like you kept it too long. So eventually the Pennsylvania State Legislature, in conjunction with the Pennsylvania Apartment Association, got some laws passed around abandoned property and what to do with that. So we're at an ejectment. When we go through the ejectment, we find out that everything that the tenant owns is still there that day. They hadn't packed up, they hadn't moved, they hadn't done any of those things. It's just all sitting there. So what's next? The official notice that's required by state law is actually on the order of possession. So if you're taking possession of the property with a constable through that procedure, you've already provided the notice. What the notice says is that for the next 10 days, the tenant has a right to request you to store their belongings at their cost. Now this doesn't sound really palatable to most owners because they already owe you money, you're already ejecting them, and why do you want to store their belongings at your cost? If you pack them up and move them somewhere, that's going to cost you something. You might be accused of damaging them, etc., etc. If they request for you to store them, then you would need to store them for up to 30 days. And they have to pay those situations, or they have to pay for the storage. If they don't request for you to store them, then you can dispose of them. The recommendations that we've gotten from our attorney in reference to this is there's not any case law yet that determines what happens if on day 11 you throw away their stuff. So I would recommend that in the first 10 days you spend some time diligently trying to get the tenant to pick up their stuff. Our company policy that seems to work out really well is in the first 10 days at no cost to the tenant. If they'll sign a statement releasing us from additional liability for their items, we will let them re-enter the property for a period of 1 day to pick up their belongings and take them out of the house. The statement that we utilize indicates the fact that anything left in the property at the end of the day is in fact the property of the landlord. So that allows us to get to a workable solution, not one that makes them happy. Most tenants would like more time to move their stuff. Not one that makes the landlord happy. Most landlords don't want to let a tenant that they just evicted that owes them normally a substantial amount of money by this point in time back into the property for any reason, but one that gets to a resolution that doesn't result in additional cost for either the tenant or the landlord. So what if you're the tenant, you're picking up your stuff and you're asked to sign this sheet? Sign it, get your stuff. You don't incur any additional cost. You're able to move your items, coordinate a day that works, have a moving truck, get your things there. The landlord is going to charge you for anything you leave left in the house for them to dispose of, and for cleaning, etc., etc. You already have a bill run up with the landlord when you're being ejected. So my suggestion here is take the time to not only get your stuff out, but to throw away the trash, bag the trash up. If you don't have a way of hauling it away, put it all in trash bags, set it on the front porch so that they don't have to clean it out of the house. Clean the house to the best of your ability, because that reduces the cleaning costs for the landlord that you're going to get the bill for, and it makes it easier for you to eventually straighten out your record. So here we've got a workable solution. Tenant's been evicted, needs to get their property. Landlord gets a document signed surrendering everything after a given period of time if the tenant and allows the tenant to pick up their items. Tenant goes back in, picks up their items, and does the best that they can to clean up the remaining items in the property, reducing costs for the landlord on disposal of items that they don't have anything to do with, and making it easier for the tenant to eventually get themselves back on track. I think the next thing that I'm going to talk about is how do tenants get back on track that have previously been evicted? What do they do to make things right and get over that hardship that they had? I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the things that can happen during tenancy that disrupts a good tenant and suddenly makes it into a bad landlord-tenant situation. This is Glenn Lehman from Lehman Property Management signing off. Thank you.